Welcome back into the Canadian Fast Break. This is our second episode where we are going to be breaking down everything CEBL that you're going to need to know that has happened this week and that we are going to discuss. So I'm very excited for this episode. Lots to break down. There's some interesting storylines that happened this week that, Gianna's going to want to talk about, Jeremy's going to want to talk about, and I am definitely going to want to talk about. So without further ado, let's check in on the guys and see how they are doing this week. Jeremy, I'll start it with you. How did you enjoy this week of the CEBL?
Yeah, it was great. It was a tough week for my Vancouver Bandits, I can't lie. We'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, all around, we're slowly starting to see, I feel like we say it every single week, but the standings are starting to mold more and more. And now all of a sudden we have, I guess, two teams that are the talk of the town, right? And again, we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's quickly just changing and sculpting the standings. And yeah, we're seeing some teams emerge up on the top.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be breaking down those Bandits a little later on. But Gianno, I'm going to check in with you. How are things in Edmonton? I know there's some shaky things going on with the Stingers, but what did you see this week?
Yeah, they had a tough game. Montreal, that game felt like a game that a contender, would want to win, and if Edmonton wanted to establish themselves in the contender space, it felt like a game they had to win. It was the complete opposite. It was a total, flat-out performance that they didn't really come out and earn enough to even say they were in contention. So, things are going a little bit wrong in Edmonton right now, and I don't think anybody necessarily knows the answer to what the key is to solve it. But man, there's always some good things to talk about in the CBL, more than just Edmonton. So I'm excited to break it down with you guys.
Yeah, we're definitely going to pose a lot of questions about Edmonton later on, but we will start it with those Vancouver Bandits. They signed Mitch Creek, as I don't think we were able to cover yet, so that's a huge signing for them to bring him in. There's a little bit of speculation if maybe he's only going to be playing those Vancouver games as we've seen so far, but they got a big win against Brampton the other day with Creek dropping 26 points, but they did drop a couple before that. Jeremy, I'm going to send it over to you first. What did you see in that game and, the couple games before that since Creek was brought in?
Yeah, we can start off on Monday, June 15th. The Bandits lost to the Scarborough Shooting Stars, 105 to 108. So just a tight game. That going into that, we could have imagined probably some easy predictions that was going to happen. It's tight all game. They're going back to back, and it was just a matter of who's gonna mess up in those transitions just by a one or two hairs, right? So Vancouver unfortunately took a hefty loss there, and then right afterwards, again, a heavy schedule for Vancouver, losing their next game to the Winnipeg Sea Bears, 114 to 81, excuse me. And that game was, again, back-to-back. The Bandits, maybe some fatigue playing a factor in there, but it was a game of physicality, and you could just see, just on the paint in general throughout the whole game, all four quarters. Vancouver was just getting tussled and turned around, and yeah, Winnipeg found a way to just utilize their bodies a lot. But then the one that surprised us, I guess it was a little bit of a header back-to-back, is 81-102 in favor of the Vancouver Bandits. And yeah, they found some light. The biggest thing for me was recognizing that they were able to find a way to turn it around. And again, I know we alluded to this a week ago in Hoops Fest, but without Jalen House, they found a way to win, right? And that's again, big without your leaders. And just to pull a 180 off of a loss from the Winnipeg Sea Bears as well, too, is just big for them.
Yeah, so many weapons, that they can have one of those guys sitting one night and then, the other step up and vice versa. But one of those weapons there is Tyrese Samuel, and he did go to a workout, but has actually came back since and dropped a double-double in the recent game. John, I'm going to bring you in here because we had Dane Danger from the Stingers go to a workout, and he still hasn't came back. But, Samuel coming right to the workout and then all the way back. What do you kind of see there in relation to the two?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? Because obviously, being in Edmonton, I immediately thought of Dane when he went off. The team really made it seem like, he was probably going to be away for a long time. Obviously, it's been probably a lot longer than I may have expected. I believe he was released right around, May 29th to 28th off the top of my head. It was before that 3-game road trip where they started in Red Deer on the 31st. So, that one was really shocking to be, there was 3 teams. I remember, if I remember correctly, it was Golden State, Atlanta, I believe it was Brooklyn as well. So, I don't know how long he's spending in each, club and where he's exactly at. I'd be very surprised, to be honest with you, if he doesn't get picked up for Summer League. And that's something that I want to put out there. I really believe he's probably going to get picked up by it, but will that happen? We don't know yet. And Tyrese Samuel, I felt like he was probably another guy that was going to get a shot at Summer League, and there's still the chance to when you get an NBA workout. I believe it was with the Portland Trail Blazers, but it was so interesting because one night he's out of the lineup. And then the next thing you know, it's like he's right back. And I think Bandits fans are very happy to have him back in the lineup because ultimately you think about that loss to Scarborough just proved really how important he was to be able to, get them more rebounds. And even though, we had our Vancouver insider on for the National Rundown, Jeffrey Kennett, and he talked about, how this is such a, weird team that isn't necessarily doing that well around the rim. It was really interesting to see, him being gone for like about 4 or 5 days at most. That's a little bit interesting. That doesn't usually happen all the time. So obviously we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. It doesn't mean he's 100% out of the Summer League running, but I'd be very shocked if he stays with the Bandits for the full season. Only because you never know what happens with Summer League. But I think the Bandits fans are very, very happy that Tyrese Samuel will be back and possibly going into the playoffs as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and there's been a lot of storylines connected with the Bandits this week. And I think the final one that I'm going to touch on here is Kyle Julius getting suspended by the CEBL in the most recent game against Brampton. I know there's probably a lot of speculation going on there, but we don't fully know the story yet. Jeremy, do you have any, insights on what could have happened or the situation?
Yeah, I mean, from all we can say, I guess, right now is just from what we can see, and it was just, I believe, under 6 minutes in the third quarter of that game, and it just looked like a fan was getting, I guess, out of pocket, out of conversation, out of turn, whatever you want to call it, and he stood up, had some words exchanged with Julius there, and potential Julius just wanted the fan to sit down. Julius is working, and then maybe that's all he wanted to do is get that fan just to respect his workplace. But for now, we're just gonna keep that headline, I guess, out on the lookout, and that's all we know for now.
Very interesting. Do you think, and follow up to this, do you think his departure, maybe just suspended for a couple games, do you think that's going to have any sort of impact on this Bandits team?
It's hard to say. I mean, you always want a coach that would stand up for your team, for your roster. So it maybe it's dependent on what the fan even said. Maybe he was attacking the team. Again, just all speculation. We don't know anything. But let's say if it was that scenario, you want a coach that backs yourself and your teammates up on the roster. So if that was the case of what Julius was doing, then so be it. But again, until we have those, actual statements of facts, it's kind of hard to say.
Fully agree. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on from the Bandits for now. But we will move on to a very interesting outcome this week as the Surge were able to get their very first win of the season. Finally, they are moved to, I believe, 1-13 now. So they beat the Brampton Honey Badgers, which is very interesting. Although there was no Sean East in this game, it's still the Brampton Honey Badgers who are a very big powerhouse in the CEBL. But without a doubt, Surge getting their first win. Gianna, I'm going to send it to you first. How do you think the Surge were able to, rally and finally get a win?
Honestly, I think it was because Sean East wasn't there. I'll be very honest. Like, I don't know if I'm taking too much stock out of this game. Like, Brampton, to be honest with you, they kind of flat out just don't look like a good team right now. Four straight losses, obviously, because Sean East II was not there. I believe the last game that he played in was a game against Montreal. I believe they lost that game as well. So he was gone for, I believe, 3 games. They lost most of those games, and to be honest with you, it just did not look like a very well put together basketball team. But the Surge are 1-11. To be honest with you, if anybody would have told you that's what would have happened when they started the season, you would have probably thought they were lying to you, and for good reason, because this team just came off of a CBL finals run. So I think that a lot of things just kind of went right for them. Honestly, there's not too much that you can point to say, hey, this is exactly this team's identity. Like, a 3-point win usually does not move the needle for many teams, especially when you're 1-11, right? Like, if your one win is by 3 points, you kind of look at it to be like, okay, what happened here? Like, I think we still look at Scarborough and say, the Mamba are the only team to, I believe, beat them right now, right? They lost by 3 points on that Paw Patrol night. And like, how much stock did we take in it at the time for the Mamba? Not a lot. Now, should we have? That's a different conversation. But, looking at it, I think that things are just kind of starting to, they're starting to find themselves a little bit. Armani Chaney, like, this guy was probably the best pickup they've made all season, being able to get out there. And even him, like, scoring 16 points. That's not a huge night for anybody in the CBL, but for that to be, like, kind of your league scorer, like, that's definitely interesting. I know Sean Miller-Moore was up there too, but, if not anybody's breaking 20 points, like, I do have concerns about that.
Yeah.
I think we went over that with Edmonton being by committee. I don't know. Yeah. I think there's just really something to be said about where exactly Calgary is right now. And to be honest with you, I still don't know if we have an idea of where they're at.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. That was a point I was going to touch on. Like, there was no 20-point scorer. It was kind of weird on how they really pulled this together. It was, again, by committee. So my question over to Jeremy is, do you think it was more so, are you agreeing with Gianno, where it's more so the fact that East wasn't playing maybe a not so great Brampton team outside of him, or do you think the Surge actually did, fully earn this win as a team?
I think as a whole, like with Sean East being out, that's a fantastic analysis, and it's hard to look away from that. But also, I guess, to play devil's advocate a little bit, you see the Surge having these 3-point, just closely knit games for their 10, I guess, losses in a row. Correct me if I'm wrong, but nonetheless, I still think that they found a way to win, even if it took 10 games for them in a tight match. So, like, regardless, we've seen them struggle in target time. There's no really any urgency, any sense of it there. So I just think it was a perfect example of, if they were trying to look to find something to fix, they fixed it, and in the smallest sense. So I don't know. It's always good to see them improving and at least have a tally in the win marker. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was Sean East. His departure at the moment right now is the biggest impact, but the Surge may be just finding a way to close out one closely net game, and now they're looking to try to do it again.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting, and this leads me to my next point, where we're going to focus more on the Badgers, right? 4 straight losses, Vancouver, Calgary, Niagara, Montreal. How much stock are we taking into those losses? I'll start with you, Gianno. Are you a little bit concerned in the least for Brampton, or are we still kind of in the top 2 for them as solidified?
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned, obviously, because Jameer Nelson Jr. is still not back. We talked about Xavier Moon, him being out of the MVP running. I think it's definitely time to say Jameer Nelson Jr. is probably not going to win, back-to-back DPO-wise. It's really time to really readjust where Brampton's at, reassess, because right now, anytime you go on a 4-game losing streak, like, as much as I say, yeah, Calgary, I still don't take much stock out of it. I am taking a little bit of stock out of, Brampton not winning a whole lot, because we don't know when Jameer Nelson Jr. is going to be back. When that happens, I think there's something to be said. Brampton can start creeping back into that top 2 conversation. But to be honest with you guys, right now, I have them at 4. Like, I don't think anytime you lose 4 straight games, whether you have Sean East the second or not, like, I'm really a little bit concerned about where this team is at. And that's coming from a number 1 Brampton believer. I had this team winning the championship right up until about 2 weeks ago. I think that something's happening here where, Sean is just not being able to completely dominate teams like we're used to seeing him do. I think that mostly comes down to, maybe offenses are starting to, defenses are starting to figure him out a little bit. We really don't know. But I feel like that kind of run is maybe a little bit over, and they need to start, finding ways to pair him with somebody that's going to step up, whether that's Cameron Thomas, Tyson, I don't know. I'm really interested to see how they kind of turn things around, because right now it sort of feels like the sky is falling, and when you were 7-1 not that long ago, that's a little bit of a different, adjustment to where fans were used to seeing them in the league.
Yeah, so kind of with that question in mind, I'll send it to you, Jeremy, but also with addition that, Scarborough and Brampton are playing their next game against each other. Does this kind of feel like, a big win for Brampton to kind of keep themselves in that top spot, conversation?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's all about momentum, right? And you got to look back to where the Brampton Honey Badgers were earlier on this season, and they found that wave of momentum and they were riding it, and no one questioned how they were winning. They were just winning. And now I think that they have to kind of look towards that window again and try to find some light of what was working earlier on this season. And again, like Gianna mentioned, maybe it's a matter of teams now slowly being able to figure other teams out and put the defense on Sean East and put the defense on Cameron Tyson. But there's also other individuals that we need to step up, too, like Tyrese Hunter. There's really those top two is Cameron Tyson and Sean East and the Honey Badgers. And other than that, there's probably just over or just under half a point deficit to Matthew Moncrief. And yeah, I just think it's something's not clicking with the Honey Badgers, and definitely looking towards the light of the first half of this season so far is where they need to head.
Yeah, so kind of looking at the standings now, the East is looking a little bit more wide open, right? Outside of Scarborough. Scarborough is 10-1. Brampton is now 7-5. Montreal somehow is 6-6, and then the River Lions 5-7. And the Blackjacks, again, I think moved to 4-8 now. I think that's their fifth straight loss, which is another conversation to be had later. But where do we kind of see this shaking up? Gianna, do you see any of these teams making a run maybe over Brampton?
I was really shocked, to be honest with you, because it's not that long ago as well we were talking about, especially me, I'll own it. I was talking about Montreal being too top-heavy. They lost their leading scorer, and all of a sudden they start winning basketball games. Like, who saw that coming? I remember thinking, up at the media level in Edmonton when JFL wasn't there, I was like, okay, this kind of feels like a game that Edmonton should easily win. That did not happen. To be honest with you, that's the reason why I had it is such a slam in the dunk for Edmonton, for them to get back in the playoff race and find their momentum. It felt like a game that they should have won. It should have been already checked off, but obviously did not go that way. Then obviously Montreal goes down to Lethbridge. They beat the Surge. Again, that's why I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know how to judge this team because Edmonton right now and Calgary, they do not look that good. And to be honest with you, when you think about that, those are 2 wins, and right there, you take those out, they're 4-6, and all of a sudden it's a different conversation. They're right there with Ottawa. I think that's the interesting part here, guys. I think Ottawa was kind of emerging as that third team, and now all of a sudden it feels like it's Montreal, and then you can't kind of count out Niagara. But what's really interesting is that they're all kind of bunched up in 2-3 games back of each other. This whole third seed is really wide open right now when it looked like Ottawa was starting to run away with it not that long ago.
Yeah, and it feels really weird. Like, I personally know how high I was on Ottawa, but this 5-game stretch, it's been brutal to watch for sure. Yeah. And even looking at it now, it's like they're all kind of 1 game back from each other up to that second spot. And to me, it feels like any one of those teams, probably wouldn't say Ottawa right now, but I could see Niagara, if they get everything together, could somehow make a run and, put themselves in a good spot seating wise for the playoffs and to potentially get this back to back, right back on track. But again, I think I'll move on from there because I do really want to go back to the West and talk about the Sea Bears a little bit. So I'll start with you, Jeremy. What do you kind of see from the Sea Bears, getting that big win over the Bandits? And that isn't even with Moon back yet. I believe he should be playing his first game whenever they play next, which actually is against the Bandits again. So with all that in mind, are we right back on that Sea Bears train? Do you see them maybe going for that top spot?
Yeah, I definitely think that their names have been thrown into the hat of contention for sure as this week has flown by. But the biggest thing again is physicality with that game. Teddy Allen, it was his show. He was so hard to ignore. 36 points, 12 rebounds. Trayvon Scott, 24 points, 6 rebounds. Isaiah Osborne looking incredible as well too. And you see Vancouver showcase their depth, but it was the Winnipeg show all game, and they were able to showcase their depth in response to Vancouver the whole time. Jalen House, 43 points. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but again, he was able to show up for his team, but the depth disappeared. I believe it was Dominic Parolin. He had some expectations coming into the game, to step up. Miller Kopp as well too, but just their buckets beyond the arc weren't connecting, and like you guys alluded to it earlier, it was beyond that arc. They were failing to find the buckets as well too. And when you're getting overstomped as well with physicality from the Sea Bears all at the same time, just simultaneously wasn't working out for the Bandits.
Yeah, so with that game in mind, Bears getting that big win and then going into Edmonton and getting another big win. Giano, what did you see in that game that caught your eye from the Sea Bears, or was it mostly just because the Stingers didn't have, anything to match what the Bears had?
Was that, are you talking about on opening night?
No, they just played a couple days ago. No?
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's my bad. Yeah, I was expecting, the Edmonton one. Yeah, no, that game was, honestly, I was expecting Edmonton to make a signing heading into that one. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Just because you release Isaih Moore, you kind of expect there to be somebody else in the lineup, especially since, he was leading the team in points since he got there, nonetheless. It was definitely a little bit like, I didn't expect it. You kind of roll the team out there to get slaughtered, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, you seen how good Winnipeg was doing, and for you guys to just go out there and really not do anything too much different and instead take away from your offense. I know it may sound harsh, but I really didn't think that they had a chance in the world to win that game. They would have needed a miracle, especially when you think about how good Teddy Allen is. And I really just don't know what the game plan was there, to be honest with you. Like, you looked at how good Winnipeg was doing, and you think about, just where they are at in the realm of the CBL right now. There's just no way Edmonton was going to be able to do that unless everybody came out on top. And I asked myself, I'm like, then why haven't they done it sooner? And right now, I don't know. The walls are kind of closing in on Edmonton a little bit. It's funny to be able to say that after, we didn't really know which direction they were going 2 weeks ago. But, I think Winnipeg, like Jeremy said, Isaiah Osborne, that guy is, like, absolutely amazing. This Winnipeg team keeps surprising us with how much depth they have. Like, week after week after week, it starts feeling like, okay, I've started to come to realization that they might be the most complete team in the CBL. And I don't know how everybody feels about that, but it starts to feel like Winnipeg is solidifying that conversation. I really don't find too many flaws in their game. I do think, Scarborough might be challenging them for that part, but I do think there's something to be said about just Scarborough. I don't know where they're exactly at. I do have questions, like Brady was talking about them being able to be playing to their opponent. For me, Winnipeg, I feel like some nights they just have it in the bag. And, I don't have to worry. Like, you watch that game and you're like, they're going to win this. Like, I don't have concerns about that. Scarborough, as much as they are 10-1, I do have a little bit of concern about that. But, flipping it back to the Winnipeg part, I think that they just feel like the most complete team to me.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, right? They just keep throwing guys in the mix, and then we now are at the point where they get to throw Xavier Moon in the mix, and it's just that seems like the final piece to the puzzle, right? They're gonna find everything together. They're gonna have plenty of games to put everything all in this one basket, get ready for the playoffs. It's definitely scary times in Winnipeg, but in a very good way. So moving from there, I actually want to go back to you again with the Stingers. We didn't get a chance to go over the Isaih Moore situation since last episode. Is there anything you want to touch on there?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people are probably going to, dog on Isaih Moore to say, hey, maybe he wasn't doing the best defensively, all that stuff. I'll cut right to the chase. Sure, people can talk about that stuff, but at the end of the day, the guy dropped 20 points and in that game. And, I think that the issues with this team go much farther than just Isaih Moore. I think that Winnipeg game really proved it, to be honest with you. People might want to say, hey, this player isn't a part working, but at the end of the day, if you're the only one really scoring that many points, I think there's a conversation for you to stay, right? It's not you get rid of this person and it's going to be fixed. That move I didn't really understand, and I don't think that it was something that we're supposed to understand at a production level. It's obviously a management decision for who gets to stay and who doesn't, but that was a little bit of an interesting one right there. And I talked about why I thought maybe somebody else is coming back. To be honest with you, I was expecting maybe Dane Danger to come back out of the blue, but that did not happen, and I don't know when that will happen or if it will happen. But right now, it just felt like such an out of the blue signing that I really don't know how to accustom it and how to process it when I don't see the vision forward. When Dane left, you knew they were going to get somebody, and they got Isaih Moore, and you felt like he was supposed to be the guy to kind of calm things down, and all of a sudden you get rid of him in 2 weeks. To me, I'm just like, okay, where do we go from here? And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody knows right now.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I think the Stingers, I was very much on them a few weeks ago, but now it's how there's not much to like at all, right? Like
Yeah.
we're just kind of right back where we started. There was a glimmer of hope, but I think it's definitely vanished pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But to look at a team with a little bit more hope, I want to actually talk about the Saskatoon Mamba for a bit because all season long, on no matter where we're talking about them, it's never been anything too great, right? We're always just considering them as one of this lower tier teams, but with
Yep.
tonight's win against Ottawa, they're now 6-5 and they're above 500. So
That's
I
crazy.
think we almost need to start talking about them in a situation, where they could have this third seed, locked up, right? They have a 2.5 game lead over Edmonton now, although they do have 2 games against Edmonton this week, which could swing it back in Edmonton's favor if they figure it out. But Saskatoon, I feel, is in a pretty good spot here to, grow that lead, figure things out, and they've really shown that they have some guys who can, go here and, get them the win. Like Tevian Jones today, 34 points, got them the win against Ottawa in crunch time. I take it he was showing out then. But we didn't get to see it live. But Jeremy, I'll swing it to you. I know you're looking at the Bandits, Sea Bears in the West. There's not really many other threats. Are these Mamba, a pretty good spot to get this third seed?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to see another team try to come in there and add some extra contention. It's always nice to see some tighter standings as well too. Leave it to last minute for the I guess standings to mold. But I don't know. I think I never put it away from myself that the Mamba were always trying to find a way to fight back. We did see them struggling earlier on in the season, and now in a blink of an eye, they're on a win-4 streak, right? So they must be doing something right. But I think it came down to, I guess, just realizing that maybe they did need to take some time to realize who they were. Maybe the rebranding did take some time to figure out their identity. And if they're here now and it's working, then big props, congrats to them for figuring out what's working. But now I think these next couple of games are going to be that leveling field where we're going to realize if that's the trend that they're following or if it's maybe just an upper rising stock for the team, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that kind of, makes me wonder, am I taking this bait here, Giano? Do you think I'm maybe overreacting a little bit, or do you think this is fair?
I don't know. It's so different. Like last week we were talking about, is the East better than the West, and I still think at full strength the East probably is better than the West. Like that's the thing that's really opening my eyes. I'm like, okay, like how much is the Mamba being really realistically the third best team in the West? Really a testament? Like, is that the Mamba being that good, or is it like maybe they just are maybe it's just the West is not that good? I really don't know. Like that's something I'm interested in. Like I think we're gonna pretty much find out. I'm interested about these games against Edmonton. Those are really turning point games for the entire season. I don't think Edmonton was expecting to really be fighting for their playoff hopes come like the end of June, but that's the position they're in. They face the Mamba and then they face the Calgary Surge. If they lose like all three of those, I'm pretty much, I think everybody's selling. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be too excited about Edmonton. But, back on track. Like, I think the Mamba are definitely, I think they're starting to emerge and put themselves in a conversation I don't think they were really prepared to be in 3 weeks ago, to be honest with you. This team has totally flipped the script. I had them going winless this season, and, I'll eat it. But I'll also say my Winnipeg pick is coming out really great that I was hopping off the train maybe too early on. So you win some, you lose some, but yeah, this Mamba team is starting to prove that they're legit. I'll say it right now, they're legit. If they end up being the third seed in the West, I will fully believe it, and I will fully give them their props because that means they've earned it. Calgary and Edmonton right now, they're losing it. They on paper should probably be the third and fourth seed. You stack them either way you want. Right now, those teams are not performing to their expectations, and props to the Mamba because they jumped on it. And you look at where they're at. Right now, they look to be the third best team in the West.
Well, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's starting to shake out, but again, we have those games, 2 Stingers Mamba games. There's a Stingers Surge game coming up. Like, there's going to be some feeling out process. So I think in a couple weeks, we're really going to see probably a solidified, third seed. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mamba, and going with them as well. It's like they've had a couple statement wins, so we can't even be like, hey, they hadn't beat good teams. They beat the Sea Bears, they beat the Shooting Stars. They're the only team to do so. So it's like, as much as we were kind of laughing about it, I think it's something maybe we should actually look at a little bit closer. So that's where I'll kind of be with the Mamba. But I think last thing here before we get into a fun little ending to the episode, Scarborough today, they announced some new signings: Jay Scrub, Cat Barber. They're 10-1, bringing in two great players, and Cat Barber, who has played with them before. So that is going to be very interesting. I will actually send it to you first, Jeremy. Are the rich just getting richer here?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to put it. I was gonna say they're like reloading when their Nerf gun isn't even like empty. You know what I mean? Like they're still letting her rip, right? So I don't know. It's just it kind of put me by surprise. In similar sense, when we saw Mitch Creek sign with the Bandits earlier on, right after last week's podcast episode. But yeah, no, I just think that it's an incredible signing for both of the individuals to add themselves onto the roster, and I think that it's going to be phenomenal for the Stars. And you have to be wary, I think, also too, because you're placing two new individuals in a roster with what's working, and you're expecting them to try to fill these roles that maybe the gears are already turning, they're already oiled, right? So sticking these new faces into the roster could potentially add those speed bumps. So I think for the Shooting Stars, it's just a matter of time of how quick they can flatten it out for these new individuals coming onto the team.
Yeah, I think there's actually something to be said there, especially kind of like looking at it with the Bandits a little bit. Michael Mulder with NBA experience, I know he had some time off, but he's still kind of trying to find his footing. You look at Jay Scrub, a guy with NBA experience. It could take him maybe a little bit to find his footing. I know he's played some other basketball in the meantime, but like Jeremy you just said, throwing these guys into a team that's definitely already working out could be very interesting. John, I'll let you speak on it a little there.
Yeah, I think that's a good problem to have. Like I was writing about this, in the Edmonton Winnipeg game. Like I think being able to beat Winnipeg, and you're saying you're 8-4 and Xavier Moon hasn't even played. Like it's a good problem to say, hey, how are we going to fit this guy into our lineup? And he's the greatest player in the CBL's history. Like that's a good problem to have. And I think if you're Scarborough, it's kind of the same, the same thing to be like, you have a wealth of riches that it's disgusting. Like it's absolutely amazing again how these two teams are able to find ways to just get better, especially Vancouver too. But thinking about it, like you said, Jeremy, it's like, your friend brings out like the Nerf Vulcan in the middle of a Nerf fight, and like the game has changed. That is what has happened in the CBL right now. Guys are popping up right out of nowhere. And I think that's what's so surprising about this. Like, you think about it, too. Like, it's also like a WWE fight. Like, when's Jameer Nelson going to join this thing? And we're going to see somebody, just come out of nowhere. It's really interesting to kind of see where that's at. But, yeah, I think Scarborough's definitely they're in a good position. If you have that position where you're like, you can be selective with who you really want on your roster, obviously you're in a good spot there. There is a limit on import players. Like, that is one thing, obviously, that keeps the league a little bit, more of a salary cap than it probably is. But at the end of the day, if you're Scarborough, like you got to be laughing to the bank right now. Like you're 10-1, you probably should be 11-1, to be honest with you. Well, as much as we just give props to the Mamba, like that was a very winnable game for the Shooting Stars. Like this could very well be the best team in CBL history right now if they probably did not win that game. And I think there's maybe a good chance for them to probably go all the way and win it. But they could have the perfect season. They could very well sweep the rest of the way. Like I wouldn't put it past them at this point. Like they're just that good of a team right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like you said, a great problem to have, but you never know. Like week to week, guys can leave, so I think it's good to have a surplus of guys that can fit in whenever we need it. But yeah, if they keep this team together, they're only going to get better, right? These two great players are coming in. They're definitely going to find a way, right? So that's kind of where I'm going to leave it there. I think we recapped every single team pretty well in depth, but I want to end this with a very good debate. We have a little fun start, bench, and cut segment here. I'm going to give you both pose this question of 3 players, and you can kind of take it as you wish if you want to take it to their impact, to the team, as their individual performance, whatever it may be. But maybe just give a little initial reaction and, in-depth analysis of what you think. So I'm going to start it off. Player number 1, we are going to have Jalen House of the Vancouver Bandits. Player number 2, we're going to have Miles Powell of the Scarborough Shooting Stars. And player number 3 is going to be Khalil Ahmad of the Niagara River Lions. So I'm going to pose you kind of 3 similar-ish players, and you're going to kind of rank them here. I'm going to give you maybe a few seconds to gather your thoughts, but whichever one of you wants to take it away.
I want to go first. Just because off the top of my head, I feel like I have a way that I'm going. Man, okay, so the other thing we don't know these players ahead of time. So Brady just spun this on us. We knew we were going to do the segment. We didn't know who the players were going to be. Ooh, okay, number 3, I'm going to go, cut. I'm going to go Jalen House. And I know people might be like, oh, come on. But this guy, like, I do think there is something to be said, about him. He's not the number 1 guy in Vancouver. Like, he may be the guy at times, but, like, he's not the only superstar and the only star there. I think for him to, like he does, he requires the basket. He requires the ball to be able to be really effective. Some of these other guys, maybe not so much. I think for me, I'd go number 2. Oh, this is not going to look over too good, but like I'm going to go Miles Powell. And I know that's probably going to be a hot take, being like the leading scorer and all. But man, I love what Khalil Ahmad's done. He's the second all-time leading scorer in the CBL. I'd have to have him starting, then have Miles Powell benched.
Okay, so actually this kind of makes me, kind of put a thing right back out there to you. Are you basing this, like on relevance to the team, or are you basing this like on this season in particular as well?
I'm going more of what I know from the players, being like, I think, when you're the second all-time leading scorer in the CBL, like I think, what you've done there, I feel like that gives him a little bit more, but I'm definitely going with like, their importance to their team and what I think their skill level is. And that's nothing against Miles Powell. I just think, Khalil Ahmad's been there, done that twice.
Well,
the guy's scored so many points.
Yeah, and even like we haven't seen any CEBL playoff experience from the other two, so that's also something I think that could be said for sure. But Jeremy, I will send it to you. Are you, disagreeing with Gianno? Are you staying the same? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a little mix-up there. So initially, I guess when you said it, I went off of the performances just so far, what we've seen in the 2026 season. So I guess hot take just to start off, Ahmad's cut, in my opinion. Sitting down there in the East isn't looking too good right now for himself. I get he has a name for himself, mad respect to what he's earned, but just at the moment, I think there's more willing individuals that have earned the position, including on the other side of that spectrum for the talk is Miles Powell, and I think he gets the start for me. One of the driven factors towards the Stars being able to be so hot this season, and then sitting in the middle. This one's kind of like perfectly balanced, I'd like to say, because every time Jalen House has been benched or not on the court, the Bandits find a way to win, so I was comfortable putting House on the bench right there.
Okay, that's very interesting to me. I don't know if you want to spit back at that, Gianno.
I feel like that's good. Like, I understand that if you're going off the 2026 stuff, I can see that. I've always said it, I'm a big fan of consistency. So, I mean, I got to go with my boy Khalil Ahmad. But I want to throw it back to Brady. Where do you have them? Because obviously you're the quiz master here. You kind of threw this on us. Where do you have them?
Yeah, I mean, initially, because I was thinking I really wanted to compare and see what you guys thought about House and Powell, and I was thinking of a similar player to put there. And I kind of thought of Ahmad, especially. I thought that would kind of be a wild card, considering I like how you went to his past and his playoff experience, because that's kind of what I would think. So I would probably rank it. I think I would almost do it the same as you. I actually think I might go Powell 1, though. I think I'd put Ahmad 2, and I think I'd put House 3. I think just from the I've seen enough clutch plays from Powell this season where I can confidently say he's going to be the same in the playoffs. I know regular season's a little bit different, but he's really shown that he wants those moments, he wants those big plays, and he's I think especially at the start of the season he put this team on his back to get them the start they did. So he's really been this entire Shooting Stars team so far, and then I think Ahmad. Yeah, he's been great back-to-back, so I got to give him his respect there. But again, this season, he's been definitely solid for sure, but again, they're a 5-7 team. I know a lot of those losses were before he was, playing this season, but I've seen some volatility with him a little bit, I think. But I love what Powell has. And then House, again, great player. He's shown me so much this season, especially, being such, a wild card. Like, we never expected that. But with that being said, I don't know what he's going to bring. Maybe playoff time, if maybe this injury might be more of a question, maybe that affects him. But again, there's going to be a lot of factors that I'm really considering. But with that being said, he has so much potential to be that guy, right? I think he could definitely, especially if Creek isn't staying, lead this team to a deep playoff run. So with that being said, all three of these players, major respect to them. But I think that's where I'd rank them for sure.
I like that.
Yeah. But with that being said, I think we'll wrap it up. Looking ahead at the games of the week this For this week, of course, we have that Scarborough Brampton game, which will be pretty big I think it's definitely more big for the Badgers for sure.
Yeah.
And then, like I mentioned, Mamba Stingers playing twice this week in the matter of 4 days. And then I think another one to look at later on in the week is obviously Bandits Sea Bears. But again, there's not too many games this week, but there's definitely some bigger ones. What are you guys kind of looking forward to? I take it, Jeremy, you want to see that Bandits Sea Bears game?
Yeah, I mean it'll be a good matchup. Hopefully that they're able to even out the series there, I guess. But that's a big heavy one, and then as well too the Brampton and the Stars. So two heavyweight matchups on Saturday. I'm looking forward to going out and watching it on the television there. But the biggest thing also I guess as well too is Stingers and Mamba, right? They have back-to-back two games this week, and it's going to really level out that middle playing field right now in the West.
Yeah, Gianna, what's kind of your prediction for those two games? Do you think they split?
I don't know, man. I think, to be honest with you, Edmonton has to, like, I feel like we're past the point of like an Edmonton going like 0-2. Like they have to even though split, I don't think like gives them anything really.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if you're Edmonton, you have to go out and prove you can win both of these games. Otherwise, like, to be honest with you, then that Calgary game is in question. And to be honest with you, how we feel about that, I don't know. Like, to me, it may be looking a little bit too far out of the week, but I think that Canada Day matchup is going to be crazy. And then honestly, looking a little bit ahead of that too, that July 5th, I believe that's going to be a CBC game. Calgary versus Vancouver. That one, boy, did that one not look so good. It probably looked good preseason, but now it's not. It's like it ain't it. So I think there's some good. I was going to say basketball coming up, but definitely some good stuff.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Make sure you watch all these games closely this week, and I'm sure we will be back next week with some pretty good storylines. As always, I've been your host, Brady Locke, joined alongside Jeremy Russo, and thanks again for Giano coming on to this episode. We will definitely see more of him in the future, but that is all for now, and make sure you enjoy the week. We will see you later.